Hi, my name is Felix Matos Rodriguez, and I am the Chancellor of the City University of New York. People who know me call me Felo, and this is my new conversation space on CUNY TV, Café con Felo. Bienvenidos a Café con Felo. My guest today is a New York City leader in the real sense, Melba Miller, CEO of the Association for a Better New York, or ABNY. ABNY is a nonprofit that mobilizes both the public and private sectors of New York towards supporting the growth of the city's communities and its businesses. Melba has a remarkable track record of creating and successfully implementing community development strategies. She has been a driving force in the latest census efforts and a key leader of building strong alliances with grassroots organizations and elected officials alike. She has served as a deputy borough president of Queens, working with the borough presidents in moving Queens forward. We could not be prouder that Melba is one of our own CUNY alums with a bachelor's degrees from John Jay College of Criminal Justice, a master's in social work from Hunter College, another master of philosophy from the CUNY Graduate Center, and now a PhD candidate in the social welfare program at the Graduate Center. Melba, welcome back to your home, and it is so great to have you here, but we have a critical question to ask you.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
How do you take your coffee, and how much of it do you drink?
So, I actually don't drink coffee. I am a tea drinker. I drink a special spiced tea, a chai tea, and I have it every morning, and I can't function without it. So I feel like a coffee drinker.
It's okay. We also embrace tea drinkers here at Café con Felo. Let me just take a little trip back in time, and for the benefit of those who might not be familiar with ABNY. Sure. I mean, it's an association that gets organized back in the 70s when there's a fiscal crisis here in New York, and ABNY is sort of like a call from the business community and others to come to the rescue of New York. Can you talk a little bit about sort of the beginnings and the origins of ABNY and how it has remained relevant since the 1970s?
Absolutely. So the Association for a Better New York, affectionately known as ABNY, is an organization made of civically minded New Yorkers who just care about the city. And in the 70s, during the fiscal crisis, a bunch of New Yorkers got together and said, we want to do our part to make sure that the city doesn't fail. So our founder, Lou Rudin, brought his friends together at what was called the very first Power Breakfast and said, how can we help the city climb out of the time that we are in? So they did very simple things like encourage all the property owners on the Upper West Side to get their sanitation crews, their private sanitation crews, out on the street to sweep the streets and keep them clean. They did things like prepay their property tax, because these were some of the largest property owners in Manhattan at the time, and they wanted to make sure that New York City had some cash just to operate, to pay the civil servant workers, to make sure that the city continued to function. And they did things like paid their property taxes, prepaid their property taxes. And throughout the years, ABNY has been very successful in doing innovative and creative projects like that, just to make sure that the city continues to run. We were very instrumental in starting the I Love New York campaign, right? Our founders sort of worked with folks in the private sector as well as the governor to launch that program. We were very instrumental in keeping the U.S. Open here in New York, moving it from Forest Hills to Flushing Meadows, Corona Park, where it is today. So throughout the years, we've been really hands-on in making sure that New York City continues to be the place where people love to come, to live, to work, and to visit.
Well, and if anybody is into the New York City scene, you also know that in your Power Breakfast is the place to go network. Absolutely. It's the place to sort of stay in touch with what elected officials and different leaders want to do. And it's usually a platform, right? It's where many electeds either come to share some new vision for what they want to do, and it's become a very important space in the fabric of the civic fabric and the political fabric of New York City.
Absolutely. I mean, at our core, we are a convener. We bring the public and private sector together, and private meaning the nonprofit as well as for-profit sector, to come talk about the pressing issues for the day. And our Power Breakfast, we have some very influential guests. You were one of our guests this past fall at a Power Breakfast. But it's not only to hear sort of the platforms or the agenda of either the private or public sector. Like you said, it's a place to network. Our members say they get more work done the half an hour of networking at our event than they do all day. So we're really proud of that.
And I can give testimony of that when you go. I mean, even, the old-fashioned business cards and people saying, we need to connect, and so many good things have come from participating in those records. So give me a sense. I mean, New York City is a different city than it was back in the 1970s.
Yeah.
Even that community of businesses and community-based organizations, I mean, it's a different mix. How has ABNY sort of evolved with the times to meet and remain the important and relevant organization that it is today?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we've done a lot of work around that over the last decade. We are only as good as our members, right? We are only as good as understanding what the issues are on the ground in communities throughout the city. So in order to do that, we have to be representative of the city. So something that we've done is really made sure that our membership is accessible to all New Yorkers, right? So we tiered our membership offerings to make sure that we are representing businesses large and small. We are representing nonprofit organizations, MWBEs, different sectors, different industries, and organizations and entities across all 5 boroughs. And in doing that, we can ensure that those folks have a seat at the table, that they are part of the convenings, and their perspective is represented when policies are being made. Just, in December, we had the mayor and the governor come announce their new New York plan to get sort of commercial districts in New York City running again. That's only made possible when it is a comprehensive representative plan that talks to the issues of all New Yorkers. And the way ABNY has really stayed relevant is to make sure that the perspective of all New Yorkers are in those conversations. Yeah.
Yeah, again, I can give testimony of how that works. But somebody who's hearing you too might get a sense also that ABNY is very serious convening space, which it is.
Right.
But ABNY also has a number of programs in which the social networking is a key part of what they do. I know that you have a program for young professionals. Mm-hmm. There's a program for women leaders too. And I know that you've been very active also going out and visiting the communities, right? Yep. I mean, I participated in one of the organized trips in Chinatown. Yep. I missed a recent one in Arthur Avenue, which is one of my favorite spaces in New York City. Can you give us a sense of those other programs that also sort of keep ABNY fresh and connected to other, and particularly younger constituents?
Sure. So again, the key is really to make sure that we are representative of a comprehensive New York. And we see sort of our stakeholder groups as like different sort of groups of New Yorkers. So we have in addition to our ABNY organizational members, we have a very robust young professionals program. And, I say that they're young professionals, but I'll probably be working for most of them in a few years. But these are very well-established, smart New Yorkers who are just civically engaged in the city. And we want to make sure that we provide opportunities for them to not only have access to the information to be the next generation of New York City leadership, but we also want to make sure that they have the space to network, to expand their professional space, right? So mentorships with our regular ABNY network and members like you, but also to receive the information and have educational forums. So we do things like boardroom breakfasts, where we invite a group of young professionals to meet with executives to talk about what was their journey, how did they get to where they are. We have our very popular What's on Tap series, where we'll have elected officials or appointed officials meet our young professionals at a bar. And over a beer, they'll talk about sort of the policy of the day or the initiative of the day. So we have a series of initiatives for our young professionals. And then we have our ABNY Women Network that's led by our ABNY member, Samantha Rudin, who chairs it. And it's really a space for professional women to come talk about the issues that they face and their challenges, right? We know that the world of workforce has changed over the last, 2 years, 3 years because of COVID. So what does that mean as a mom, as a working mom? What does that mean as a woman? What are some of the issues you face as an executive, right? in some male-dominated fields. So it's really to provide a space, a safe space, so women can convene and talk about the issues that they care about. And then we have the special programs, like you said.
It's interesting you mentioned sort of that journey for sort of women professionals, right?
Yeah.
I want to sort of now go back to some of your history, right?
Sure.
As someone who's, broken a few glass ceilings in terms of the different things that you have done. When somebody looks at your, at least schooling, educational resume, they look like John Jay, social work. Now she's with ABNY, which has this sort of corporate side to it. Yeah. How does all those things sort of fit into the Melba Miller story, right? In
Sure.
terms of because the one thing that is a constant is that wherever you go, you've been incredibly successful. People embrace you, so give us a little bit about how you get from that Melba Miller in John Jay and now at ABNY.
Sure. So I love breaking things, especially glass ceilings. But, I'm really proud of my educational journey and being a proud CUNY graduate. I remember when I was a deputy borough president in Queens, I started out as the director of economic development, working with small businesses and big corporations. And then I became deputy and I kept that portfolio. But what was really important is that I kept my social work degree on the wall, because I wanted everyone to know that there are different types of social workers, right? So I was really intrigued in the field of social work because of the community organization and planning aspect of it. I wanted to figure out how I can ensure that communities had the ability to increase their social functioning in the world, whether it's communities of geography, like neighborhoods, or communities of interest, like small businesses or immigrant businesses. And I think, throughout all of the different jobs and professional opportunities that I've had, that's sort of been the constant, right? So how do I organize this group of stakeholders so that they can function better in the world? And they could address sort of the structural barriers that they face on a local level, on a national level, and sometimes on an international level. So, what really makes it come home for me is that my CUNY education was so important to that, because I was trained by people in the field. When people talk about, why did you stay in CUNY so long? The reason why it was so important is because all of my professors were people in City Hall, yep, or people in the business industry or the sector that I was interested in. And that really sort of led the way to where I am today and be able to sort of function with my board, my members, and all the different communities we work with.
Music to my ears, what you said. We're going to take that segment and use it in our recruitment efforts as we want to bring more people to the CUNY community. As you describe that connection between your take on social work and your work on communities and the things that you've done, you mentioned the deputy borough president, but at ABNY, for example, I think that was an incredible explanation as to, for example, your fantastic work on the census. Which really, needs to be sort of applauded. But can you give us a sense about that work? Because I think that sort of probably brought all these things in your background, yeah, to one connecting spot.
Sure. So, people hear ABNY and sometimes they forget it's the Association for a Better New York. So it's for all New Yorkers. And I think what we were really able to do with the census is sort of broaden our network deep into communities, work with community-based organizations, grassroots organizations, advocates. And sort of my background in social work or stakeholder engagement and empowerment really enabled me to bring the resources of ABNY, right, this incredible network of business leaders and civic leaders and educational leaders into communities to talk about something that affects their daily life, the census, right? People don't make the connection. They know it's a survey, it's a form, but they don't realize if you're counted, right, that goes to billions of dollars of federal funding that touches your lives every day, whether it's the transportation system, whether it's affordable housing, whether it's childcare, whether it's free lunch programs in schools, right? So being able to use sort of the experience that I've gained over the years, my training as a social worker to engage communities in authentic ways, I think was a key to making the 2020 census successful, not only for Abney, but also for the entire city of New York and the state.
You did a great job, and,
Thank you.
and we were so happy in the CUNY side to have our Census Corps, to have our students participating in getting paid internships and being engaged in all that work, and actually using the assets that those students have, the fact that they spoke so many languages, that they came from those communities, that they could engage in the trust of the individuals, that sometimes being counted, might give the wrong impression and idea about why they're doing that. So I thought it was an example of New York sort of coming together and working hard, and we missed, what was it, like 30-some painful...
Yeah, they said it was about 80 votes. To save a second seat, but we did well. We were extremely successful. We were estimated to lose 2 congressional seats. We only lost 1, and here in New York City really kept the numbers for the entire state. So we were very successful and happy about it.
No, this was a great effort. And you mentioned now sort of the 2 congressional seats and going back. Abney is such a broad coalition, right? Mm-hmm. Can you talk about how do you engage elected officials, right? Because that's always a tricky terrain, but an important terrain. So how is your engagement with the elected officials?
Yeah, so we have a long history with electeds. We see government as a partner, and we really want to express to them that we are their partner in everything and to use our expertise. So over the years, we've been able to have, whether it is, the majority leader, Chuck Schumer, come talk to, our network about what's on the horizon and get feedback and get advice, or the head of the New York City Economic Development Corporation will come to our membership and say, listen, we're thinking about these initiatives, what do you think? But it's really a symbiotic relationship between government and the private sector, and everything that happens in our city happens because of that intersection of the public-private, whether it's nonprofit or for-profit, to make the city run. So we cultivate that relationship. We're very proud of that relationship, and we hope that they value it as well.
Well, I mean, and I think also the historic presence of Abney as a constant force that they can rely on, right?
Absolutely.
And it's an institutional presence. It's also one that is tied to, individuals too. Stephen has been such an incredible leader in Abney, and I know that you guys have a great yin and yang relationship in working together. But it's that teamwork, that continuity that I think gives confidence to everybody that it's going to be a fair space for people to come work together and do what they have to do. Anything on the horizon for Abney? Anything big coming up that you can give us a little taste of what's coming?
Yeah, I mean, we are always looking at sort of the moment in time that we're in and how can we be helpful. And as we look at sort of the city climbing out of the pandemic and looking at the upcoming recession that's coming, we want to make sure that we are doing our part to make sure New York stays solid and strong. One of the things that we are looking at is how to support the middle class. As sort of the city fights with making sure that lower income New Yorkers can stay and have housing and have the services they need, to make sure that we are cultivating and supporting efforts to keep the higher earners in New York because how they contribute to the tax base. We also think it's important to maintain a very, very strong middle class. And if we look at the census numbers and we look at other data of the middle class leaving New York, we want to make sure that we are creating opportunities to close the wage gap, to make sure that home ownership is available, right? Because that's a staple for middle income. Looking at sort of the tax structure, looking at educational opportunities, all of those things. So I think that's sort of where we're focusing for 2023.
Well, and that's perfect in terms of the connection with CUNY, who's been a member of Abney for many, many years, and that work particularly in building the workforce that's going to be helping us to get out of the pandemic, to continue to build the city in a much more equitable way.
Absolutely.
And, CUNY is such a key player in that pipeline of education all over the borough. So we look, really, really looking forward to working closely with Abney and all your stakeholders moving forward. Let me take a break here. Thank you, Melba, for chatting about all things New York and for sharing a cup of tea with us here. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we will be taking student questions. Welcome back. You are watching Café con Felo, and today my guest is the formidable Melba Miller, the CEO of the Association for a Better New York. In each episode, Café con Felo saves space for students to ask my guests any questions they might have. This time we went to Baruch College and its Zicklin School of Business for those students. Here is the first question, and it comes from Daniel.
Hi, my name is Daniel and I'm a sophomore at Baruch College. My question is for Melva Miller. As the CEO of A Better New York, I know so much of the role is growing the organization's presence by finding strategic partnerships. Can you provide some insight into what that process is like? And are there any lessons you've learned from the process that us CUNY students can benefit from moving forward?
Yeah, that's a great question, because we can't operate without strategic partnerships. I think sort of how we do that is look at the need of the day, making sure that we are not only tapping into our network, which are amazing experts in their fields, and utilizing them for their talents. And they are always happy to participate, but also looking at external partners, right? So whether it is a non-for-profit in the Bronx who has a specific insight into a community that we might not have an introduction to, and we want to meet and reach out to them. We do a lot of that strategic partnership through our Abney Foundation, where we provide small grants to community-based organizations for the great work that we do. And I think that's really the best way. When we talk about strategic partnerships, we want to make sure that they have, and one of the lessons learned, we want to make sure that they have the capacity to do what we're asking them. And a lot of times it's money. So we make sure that we want to give them the tools to be successful in whatever asks that we make, whether that's funding, whether that's finding relationships with other individuals. But it's really about sort of building those relationships by making asks that we know that they can deliver on and providing any capacity and support we can in doing that.
And I know from experience that you are relentless in that task of knocking on doors and making connections. And I won't mention a name, but someone new president of a campus in New York reached out to me and said, Melba reached out to me and wanted me to be part of the board and participate. What do you think? I said, well, the question is, at what point you want to say yes to Melba? You want to say yes now, or you want to say it down the line? Because one of the great things that you have is your credibility in the things that you have done, and Abney's credibility, and that makes it easier to sort of bring the strategic partners, going back to Daniel's question. So
thank you.
Let's take a second question. Now we have Manuela, also coming from Baruch.
All right.
Hello, my name is Manuela Gallo, and I am a senior at Baruch College, majoring in journalism and political science. My question is for Melba Miller. One of ABNY's goals is to promote civic engagement. Based on your experience, what do you think is the #1 thing that holds back New Yorkers from getting involved in their community? And what is the most effective tactic that ABNY has used in order to break down that barrier? Thank you.
That's a great question.
Another great question, yes.
Yeah, Baruch's in the house. I think what most New Yorkers tend to think of when it comes to civic engagement is how effective they can be. And I think a lot of people are hesitant to get involved, whether it's on the community level, like the community board, whether it's with their civic organization, their block association, because they feel like their time and their participation won't equate to action, right? And I think in my experience, showing the connection has been the most effective way to get people engaged and involved and interested, right? So talking about the census, when we talked about sort of if you fill out this form, right, exactly, you can get that pothole on your street filled, then they make the connection because it impacts their lives. But I think most people are most hesitant to engage because they don't see that their participation will actually affect change, and the way to get them to do it is show them that it can. I mean, there's been political races where, elected officials have won by 61 votes, right? Every vote counts. Yep. So I think really making that connection for New Yorkers has really been key to making them more involved and excited about being civically engaged.
And it's something also that in New York, with such a high immigrant population, and or the daughters and the sons of immigrants too, we cannot assume that those communities know about the same kind of civic engagement that we need in New York and in the States to be able to have the viable democracy that we want too. So, I mean, that's one thing I think about in CUNY, about our role in educating about the importance about those things. And then when they see it in action, it becomes a different story. But it's been great having you here, Melba.
Thank you.
You know, we have limited time, so that's all the time that we have today. We hope next time we have you over, we can call you Dr. Melba Miller when you
Yes.
finish your PhD, right? But I want to thank you for your dedication, for all the great things that you do for New York City. It's a blessing to have you on our side, and keep up the great work personally and in APNI too. So I want to remind our viewers that if you're interested in APNI, you can watch their Power Breakfast on CUNY TV every Monday through Thursday at 9 a.m. So you can check out all those wonderful New York leaders at 9 a.m. here in CUNY TV. Thank you for watching, and please tune in for Café con Felo on weekends. That's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. here at CUNY TV. Nos vemos.